So in this section, we're going to be reinforcing the selection tool and the ways we can use it. And in order to do that, we are going to be drawing a comic. So to start with, I want to make sure that I have my pencil selected and make sure that I have the right color of ink that I'm going to be using. Then I'm going to go over to my brushes, make sure I'm on sketching. All right, I'm in my pencil. Now our next step is we're going to actually sketch some comic panels. So let's go to our layers. This is layer 1. We'll keep it that way for now. I think we're going to be combining and merging some layers here in a few minutes, so we'll worry about renaming later. So I want to draw a comic panel. Boom! That is ugly. Let's try this again. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to wait for my quick line to snap in by not removing my pencil from the face of the iPad there. And then, if I want this to be a perfectly straight line, I place another finger down on my canvas, and there we go. I have made a perfectly straight line, and I could do the same along the top. Let that snap into place, use my other finger. Then I can make another line down, let that snap into place, use my finger. And then lastly, another line like that, snap into place, use my finger. So there we go. We've just drawn a perfectly square panel. Works pretty well. Here's the problem. I want 3 of these things. How am I going to get 3 of these things? Well, let's start by resizing all of this. So make sure we're on the right layer. So let's grab our selection tool. We will make our selection. And then once that is selected, down below, we have all our options by freehand and automatic. And I'm going to hit these 2 lines, the one line stacked on top of the other one. And what that's going to do is that's going to duplicate this square to another layer. There we go, from selection. It's kind of hard to see, but if I use the arrow tool, I can actually move that box around. So there we go, we have our second panel. Then I'm just going to use that selection tool again, because I want 3 panels, so I want 3 different layers, and I'm going to hit this line at the bottom on top of the other line, which will create a new layer with what I have selected in it. There we go. If I grab the arrow tool, look at that. I have 3 boxes right there. They're all a little bit too big, so I'm going to resize them, and I'm going to resize them all at the same time. Now, if you'll remember from a couple sections back, we can move layers all at the same time, and we can resize them as well, but I have to have them all selected. So I have 1 layer selected, I swipe to the right and let go, and now I've selected 2 layers, and I have now selected all 3 layers. So now when I grab the arrow tool, I'm moving all 3 layers around. Also, when I pinch in on these boxes, I have now resized all of them at the same time as well. So now when I let go of that arrow tool, I can go back to my layers and I could just grab one of them and I can move that to where I want it to be. I'll try to line it up with my other box there. And let's grab that other box. Oops, that's the wrong box. Grab this box using my arrow tool. Let's try to line it up again. There we go. So that looks pretty good the way it is. Let's line it up a little better there, Brad. There we go. So now we have these 3 boxes. We kind of have the rough outline for these 3 boxes. And I'm going to select them again, kind of like I did before, swiping to the right to get all the layers going. And now I'm just going to move these all to try to kind of eyeball it and center these 3 panels on the page. Now that we have all the panels here, we could actually grab the bottom of one of these things and make them longer, or we could make them shorter. Or if we were making 2 layers of panels, I could duplicate them all and then put another row in there. But for now, I think I'm just going to make them a little bit taller and go with what we have. So kind of center these up a little bit, and then I'm going to unselect it, and that's pretty good. Now you probably noticed as I resized these, some of these corners got a little wonky. These don't line up perfectly. That's totally okay, because these are just our pencil lines. We're going to be going over these with ink lines next. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So in order to do that, I'm going to merge all of these together. There's several ways to do this. Since they're all selected, I could put them in a group, and I could merge them that way. Or I could, with my fingers, take the top one and the bottom one and smush them all together, and when I let go of that smush, there we go. I just pinched those 3 layers together into one. And now that they're merged, I can actually rename these pencils. Alright, so for our next trick, we're going to create yet another layer. So let's click on that plus button in the upper right-hand corner of my layers. Let's tap on that layer and rename it to inks. So inks, and of course I forgot to delete the first part, so INKS inks, let's go. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. So what do we need to do next? We need to change to our inking brushes. So tapped on my brushes, go down to inking, make sure I'm on the technical pen. And we can use any pen we want. We could actually use the gel pen, which I think gives us a more consistent line when we're drawing. Could I make it bigger though? Not really, I don't like that pen anymore. I'm gonna undo that and go back to just my old-fashioned technical pen. That seems to work pretty well for me. Now let's use selections a little bit more, because we have just made 3 uniform panels. But what if we want the center panel to be wider than the 2 side panels? How would we do that? Well, I could redraw the lines, or at this point, I could use the selection tool to do it. For example, in the upper left-hand corner, I have grabbed my selection tool, and now I can free draw an area, or if I want to be more precise, I could tap points and create a nice, boxed area, kind of like that. Then when I grab my arrow tool, I could just slide that to the right, which will make my middle panel a little bit wider, and then I can unselect it. And then I could go over here and tap some points and do this again. Arrow tool, slide that over a little bit. So there we go. That's looking better. Now, what about this big middle area? We've got these extra spaces right here and right here. That we don't want that. Hey, our selection tool can help us there too. So let's grab our selection tool, and I'll just kind of grab my points like this. And then I can grab my arrow tool again, and we could use that to pull out these lines just to make them cover the area that we want it to cover. And when I let go of my selection tool, I've done it. I've made that middle panel wider than the 2 panels around it. So now we're going to add our ink panel. So let's go up here to our layers. Let's go ahead and hit the plus button to create a new ink layer. Of course, I'm going to rename it. I'm going to name this, I'm going to go backwards first. And then I'm going to name this Panel Inks. There we go. Panel Inks seems pretty good to me, so we'll go ahead and shrink that. Gonna make sure that I'm on my technical pen, because that's what I'm going to use to ink these things. And then I'm just going to draw lines. And of course, if I let the quick line snap there, I get a nice little quick line in there. Gonna put my finger down so I get a perfectly straight line. And then, if I want to, I could do what I've done before. I could actually grab this like so, duplicate it, and then move that ink line down so I'm keeping the same line width throughout. There we go. In fact, I could create another layer and make sure that I'm doing the same thing along the sides. Let that snap, tap my finger on that. And actually, if I'm gonna be duplicating, I might as well zoom in here and, erase the top of that line a little bit, erase the bottom of that line a little bit. And then I can use my selection tool, and I could just come in here and duplicate it like so, and then it's super easy to just move over just like that. And if I want to duplicate in another way, I could always go to my layer palette, and if I swipe to the right on any given layer, whoops, let's try this again, I can lock that layer so I can't paint on it anymore. I could duplicate it, or I could just delete that layer. So let's go ahead and duplicate that layer. We might as well duplicate it a couple times here. And there we go. Actually, let me get off this selection tool here really quick. Now we'll grab that arrow, and now I can just grab each and every line. That there. Grab my next line, my arrow tool. And the reason I'm doing it using this duplication method is that I want to keep the lines a consistent width throughout all these panels. Also, this is just a little bit of a shortcut. I could manually draw those in, but oftentimes I find that I start to lose a little something. Do I need to duplicate this again? I do. So let's duplicate that one last time, grab my arrow, and then bring it to the end. So there we go. We have all that. We have all these layers. So what we can do is we could smush all of these panels together again, just like that. I've pinched them together. I let go. Now our panel inks are all one layer. We don't need our pencils anymore, so I'm going to just turn that layer off by tapping on that little checkbox there. And now I just need to come in here and clean this up. Now what's cool about the eraser is the eraser works in the same way that all of the other brushes do. So if I tap on the eraser, I can erase like a pencil, I can erase like a paintbrush. I have my studio pen on now. I can use my technical pen or gel pen as an eraser. So I can do all that. So I'm just going to tap on that studio pen, go back here. And when I'm erasing, I can erase. That's not my eraser. I grab that. If I'm erasing, I can erase in a funny line, but if I hold it down, what does it do? You bet. It's a little hard to see, but it's just created a straight line. So if I want, I can do a line there, and then I can just kind of make, it's a quick line now, it's kind of hard to see, but I can make it a really sharp angle. Then I can shave off that edge, and then I'll do like a quick line here, let it snap. That wasn't exactly what I wanted, so we'll undo that. Quick line snap, close enough. Kind of get in there, make these nice and clean. So as you can see, you can make some pretty nice comic panels, and as you practice with this, you get a little faster. I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good at just erasing with my eye, just looking at it and erasing while looking at it. Works pretty well for me. But the quick line is another way to do it. I'm almost done. Let me just knock out these last couple corners. This is probably the part of the tutorial where I should tell myself, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect, Brad. But old habits die hard, so I'm gonna make these cleaner than they probably need to be for this this little section here. There we go, and one more corner and we'll be done. There we go. So now when I zoom on out, if I pinch way in, it'll snap right there just like that. And we have some beautiful panels going on here.